So the data pig thing is actually something I tell people that, pigs, if you throw mud at them, they start enjoying it. It's the same. So I always say I wallow in data. If you give me more data you throw at me, I'm happier. That said, I picked up a very different topic actually. I did not want to do, I'm not a techie. I'm a BCom student, finance professional. Last 5 years I've dabbled in data aggregation, building products for hedge funds to use using alternative data. So my background has actually not much to do with the topic, but this is a passion area. And ubiquitous AI is not a topic you will hear often. It's a coined phrase actually. It's somewhere where it's kind of there all around you, but it's so inbuilt into your process you probably don't even realize you're using AI. The standard examples are, Amazon recommendations and Netflix recommendations. So I didn't want to go with any of that. My intent here is to open your eyes, hopefully, to something that you haven't used before, and look at design principles from that, right? Any birders in this room? Bird watchers. Brilliant, then I can say anything and get away with it. Anyone who knows bird watchers in this room? Even better. Perfect, then I'm like your guru for this. So let me start with talking about why I chose this, right? I was out for a quote-unquote a pilgrimage weekend to Tirupati over the last weekend, and my family, the per capita binoculars, including the 6-year-old in my family, is 1. Every one of us has a pair of binoculars. So, and we picked up bird watching years ago. So, and I want to talk about this one app called Merlin. It's developed and operated by Cornell's Ornithology Lab. They did and brought in AI into bird watching before AI was a thing we were even talking about. They started with a rules-based engine, as all of us do, and then they moved on into using image recognition, and now they do bioacoustics, and beautifully at that. And I'll talk about why this is a app and a journey worth looking at and take inspiration from for any problem that you would want to solve. Because somebody was talking about how do you make the shift from a model to operationalization. And the answer is, you can create a model, you can get the system to also support the model, but if it's not adopted, it doesn't work. It doesn't really matter. What problem did you solve if nobody used that app or that solution, right? So the problem they identified was straightforward. That's the kind of a book that we carry into the field when we go bird watching. A huge book. It's a Grimmett and Skip is like the standard book. There are 500 plus birds only in the south of India. There are 1,300 in India, identified species. Every bird has 3 morphs. You have a female, which looks very different from a male, unless you're looking at the standard birds like crows. You've got a juvenile, which again looks very different, and then you've got the male. And male is actually the prettiest of the 3 variants. And imagine this has to be solved across scale. You solve it for one geography, you can pretty much replicate it. So they got the secret sauce right. They got the right problem. You don't carry such a large bird book. And what happens in the mentality of a birder is, you want to come back, you want to sit in, catalog what you saw. And a lot of times what happens when you're doing multi-day trips is you don't. And you kind of miss out the whole thing of actually cataloging. So they started something. eBird was a checklist, which is an app-based checklist. Every time you go to the field, you just tick the birds you see and it catalogs what you have. They started it in 2008, was adopted well. They launched Merlin in 2014 with Q&A-based, rule-based identification. 5 questions you answer: size of the bird, colors on the bird, and a couple of other questions: where you saw it, what was it doing, was it swimming, was it on the thing? And then it gives you a short list of potential birds based on your GPS location. Very basic. 2017, they launched Photo ID. I started using Merlin in 2017. Terrible. Today, I can guarantee it gives me 90% accuracy because I've been using it since the time they launched. 2021, they started bioacoustics, which means you listen to a bird amidst a whole bunch of noise, including cars whizzing past, cars honking. It will isolate 5 different birds in that location and tell you what those 5 birds are. And this works for India, Africa, North America, Australia, or pretty much all the continents now. And they've scaled up really fast after AI became easier to scale. It took a while for the first 2017 to 2021. It was not great. 2021 to 2023, they've scaled up like crazy. But what makes this special? Citizen science is probably the best example of used citizen science that I have seen personally in any field. They hit a gold mine. Photographers love sharing photos. They love tagging photos. So what do you get? You get a self-tagged, reasonably accurate training data set. there is a library they call Macaulay Library, where actually people are encouraged to go post their findings and stuff. And people love doing that, right? I saw this bird, nobody's seen it in 50 years, I'll go post. So they get direct access. Most birders do this. Every time I upload an image and use the app to recognize a bird, my image automatically gets uploaded to Macaulay. And then automatically morphs, and I confirm whether this is the bird I saw. So there is a second degree of reinforcement learning that happens along with the app. They also created, therefore, the whole ecosystem to maintain the solution. It's a beautiful system. So tapping on the right points from an ego perspective and making it rewarding for people to keep contributing made this very interesting, the way they solved it. But adoption, this is the interesting part. Most of us, when we go into the forests, there is no connectivity. So they need to have a model that works offline. Image recognition across huge volumes of data offline. They actually wrote a code, which I found out later was 25 MB, which does this matching. It runs on your smartphone, offline. Only thing, of course, when you're online, you download the catalog of images by geography upfront. So India has one catalog. Africa, East Africa has one. North America has one catalog. But 500 MB to a GB, which is quite normal for a 128 gig smartphone, right? This problem is pretty much what solved their adoption. If I have to wait and come back for connectivity, I'm not going to use the app. The minute they cracked this, adoption went up crazily. But this is a learning, I think, can be applied to many, many problems where we today try to still look at connectivity. Image recognition and bioacoustics, these are two resource-intensive problems to solve for. And they've solved for it. And they're quite open, by the way. There are multiple webinars on the topic. So if from a more technical perspective, you want to understand the algorithms they've used, the techniques you've used, please go to a website called AI for Good. They've actually done a 90-minute webinar on bioacoustics. That's the tougher problem. I think the image recognition was solved a long time back. On the right is the example of an image my 11-year-old niece took, which is not exactly very easy to understand, and how Merlin resolved it really fast for us. Right? So something like this has the potential to get in people in today's day and age of instant gratification. I could get my 6-year-old and 11-year-old to hook on to bird watching in an era where people are not interested. Right? The incremental innovation started with the bioacoustics part, where they actually started with 1,220 species. They played back 95 days of cumulative audio, but the number of time the machine was trained on listening to it was roughly about 40 years worth of time that the machines were trained on. One of the major things that they did do was bring in image. They brought in image processing for bioacoustics. There's a lovely paper on this topic. If people are more technically inclined, I'll point you to that link. But a lot of that work was focused on how do I remove a bird noise from a non-bird noise. Once you do that, then they got the citizen scientists to tag the bird noises. And interestingly, what I realized as late as last weekend was 3 months ago, what could not be recognized today is being recognized. So the speed at which the app is learning and scaling is insanely fast, right? These were the user stats. Actually, Sound ID is what made it uptick. That's like 4 million. I didn't even know there'll be 4 million, 3.5 million bird watchers in the world, but apparently there are. And the uptick started when they brought in Sound ID. Because most times when you're inside a forest or somebody says there's a bird, you actually can't see it. You don't know what you're looking for. Are you looking for a blue bird, an orange bird, a white bird, or a crow? Right? So this helps you isolate, saying, okay, this is the broad features of the bird you should be looking for. So that's when they started, and that's the name of the 90-minute session. It's called Unlocking the Symphony of Birds by AI for Good. 90 minutes, worth a listen. And automatically this increased market size because the adoption that I personally saw, because I've been using this for a while, I've started seeing kids use it quite often. Kids who you take out on one nature walk and then you realize, okay, right? So they expanded the market. But here's the thing. How do you actually make it? I call it ubiquitous because today bird watching has changed because of Merlin. It's pretty much there. You do not step into the field without taking Merlin. Most of the users are not analytics people. They don't care about AI. They don't even know that they're being assisted by AI. That's how ubiquitous is. How did they embed this better? So Swarovski Optics, Swarovski, by the way, makes one of the best binoculars in the world, not just the jewelry part of it. They actually funded this research in 2019. The minute they did it, the acceleration of the research also went up because there's a private capital coming in. This year, they're releasing a binoculars with this integrated. So I don't need an app. I actually look at the bird. It will actually square the bird and tell me what bird it is. Now that's commercialization. So started with a non-profit, and there's enough material to actually figure out how do you make it ubiquitous in terms of, I'm actually taking that one additional step of taking a picture of my picture or describing a bird, and I'm actually saying, okay, here's the Minority Report version of bird watching. And to me, I think that journey has been very, very interesting to look at because they started with the right problem. They solved it in increments. They created an ecosystem. And then they also found a way to commercialize. Damn, binoculars are expensive. They're $4,800 right now. But the good thing with optics is usually the pricing comes down. Maybe 5 years from now, this is probably par for the course. And that's it. So I just wanted to open a topic which is not oft spoken about, which is looking at AI from a good perspective and solving problems at scale very differently.
Thank you so much, Smitha. This has been fascinating.